Alhamdulillah wa salat wa salam ala wa Rasulullah. As I was stating earlier, we're picking up where we left off. The quiz that I gave you guys yesterday helped to establish where we are now. We stopped off where Ali had an army of over 20,000 men. The sad thing about it is that his army was basically comprised of men who rebelled against Uthman, of men who took part in the murder of Uthman. And this was an embarrassment for Ali, but that's all he could muster together. And remember, it was never his intent to really fight against Ayesha and Talha and Zubair. He wanted to end this peacefully, as did they. So when he arrived in Basra with his army, he informed his men that there is to be no fighting on their part whatsoever. He said, we are not here to fight. I am here to end this peacefully with Talha, Zubair, and Ayesha. He said, I do not want any of you to be the first to shoot the bow. And then he sent a man out on the battlefield with a Quran on his head, which in Arabic times back then symbolized that I want peace. It's like we're raising a white flag. It's a peace call. And then he asked for Talha and Zubair to meet with him privately so they can try to resolve the issues. And Zubair and Talha met with Ali, and they did resolve the issues. They all had the same goal. They all did want to bring to justice the people responsible for murdering Uthman. But Ali's thing was, I only asked you guys to wait, to give me a chance to get settled in as Caliph, because I had the rebels with me in Medina. The rebels, Uthman, they forced me into this. I asked you guys to give me time to get the people, to win the people. Talha and Zubair realized, what Ali was saying, and they rekindled their brotherhood, and they left peacefully. They were all in agreement that they would work together as one, and they would bring to justice the people responsible for Uthman's murder after once gaining the people's support. But when the rebels saw, when the people of Ali's army, who were the people of Kufa, when they saw that Ali was resolving this peacefully, they began to worry about themselves. What's going to happen to us? We were the ones responsible for killing Uthman and rebelling against him. If we don't make them fight, they're going to come after us. So the hypocrites amongst them staged a coup in which they tried to attack Ayesha's army at night. Right at night before Fajr. Talha and Zubair saw it happening. They received word of it happening, and they tried to stop it. The hypocrites then went to Ali and said, look, Talha and Zubair is attacking us, so don't we have a right to defend ourselves? Ali looked out and saw it, and he didn't know what was going on. He thought they were attacking. He said, yes, defend the men, defend each other. And that's how the fighting began. The hypocrites played a big role in this. And this is why I tell you guys, the hypocrites live amongst us. They're worse than the kafir. Because the hypocrites claim to be Muslim. They look like us, dress like us, they pray with us. They're right there with us in the mosque. They're right there with us in our homes. Pretending that they believe in Allah, saying that they believe in Allah, and there's nothing we can do to them. We have to sit up and put up with their fitna, because we cannot do anything to them unless they outright deny La ilaha illallah, which they're not going to do, not publicly. So here the hypocrites, had staged a coup where they staged this battle. And when Ayesha heard the fighting and saw the fighting, she sent a man out to the battlefield holding a Quran on his head to try to get peace. The people didn't respond. So then she came out on her own, got on top of her camel, and tried to get the men to stop fighting, thinking they would stop seeing her. But all this did was anger the hypocrites more. They tried to kill her. They were taking shots at her. Ali saw it. He saw that her safety, her life was in danger, so he sent his personal guard out to the battlefield, told them to cut down her camel's legs, and then grab her and take her to safety. And that's what they did, and that's how that became known as the Battle of the Camel. When they cut down the camel's legs, the camel screamed so terribly that all the fighting stopped. And they carried Ayesha off the battlefield, and thus the battle was over. But what happened next? What happened next? The damage had already been done. When the battle was over, Ali inspected the battlefield, and it was piled high with dead bodies and also scattered limbs, arms, feet, legs. In fact, the whole plain outside of Basra was soaked with blood. And as he looked at the dead, he recognized many familiar faces. Many of them were eminent companions, people that they had been with together with since the beginning of the Prophet Muhammad's mission. And it was a deplorable sight. Ali was very sad. So he arranged for the funeral prayers to be held. And he arranged for the burial of all the dead from both sides. Some of the vultures of the desert had come to eat from the dead, and they carried away body parts. In fact, one vulture carried a body part to Medina. And when the people saw this hand lying on the ground, it had a ring on it. And it was a hand that the ring had the name of Abdul Rahman ibn Attab. And Abdul Rahman ibn Attab was another one of the eminent companions. So many virtuous eminent companions were killed. And we talked about how Talha was killed too. Zubair was beheaded. So, and these were men who were promised paradise. Talha and Zubair were two of the 10 men given the great news of paradise. And this is how they met their deaths. So Ali did not look at this as a victory, because it was not a victory. It was a great loss. A great loss. Muslims killing Muslims. So what Ali did was he ordered 3 days of mourning. 3 days for the people to mourn all of the dead. And also during those 3 days to bury the dead. Some of his followers, and again, many of them were hypocrites because they were the men from Kufa who played a role in murdering and in rebelling against Uthman. Some of Ali's followers demanded that since they won the battle, that they wanted the survivors to be sold into slavery. Ali said, this is nonsense. I am not going to sell Muslims to other Muslims as slaves. He said, in fact, no one is allowed to enslave any of the people of Basra. He said, and furthermore, you cannot take their property either. He said, the only spoils of war you can have is what you find on the battlefield, and that's it. This is preposterous. That's how upset he was at what had happened, you know. And after the 3 days of mourning were over, Ali then entered inside the city of Basra, and he declared amnesty for all the people there. In other words, I forgive you all. He didn't hold anyone responsible. These were all Muslims, fighting Muslims who had fought and killed Muslims. He asked for the people to all gather together in the mosque so he could give a speech to them. And when they gathered together, he addressed them. He told them that his heart was heavy at what had happened. And he said, and this would never have happened if it weren't for the hypocrites. He said, why did this have to be? He said, when I was forced into this position as leader of the Muslims, you, the people of Basra, you gave your allegiance to me. He said, but you allowed the hypocrites amongst you to come and turn you against me without just cause. He said, and this is how all this began. He said the circumstances under which Uthman was killed were atrocious. He said it was never my intention to allow the perpetrators of that to get away with it. He said, but you have to understand what my position was. I was forced into this position too. I had the rebels around me too. I couldn't move quick enough. He said, I made it my priority to try to bring us together as one, to unite us. But no, we all played into the hands of the hypocrite. He said, including our two beloved brothers, Talha and Zubair. He said, Talha and Zubair were the first to offer allegiance to me, but they were also the first to reject it. He said, they played into the hands of the hypocrites too. He said, we all did. Okay? He said, the hypocrites used vengeance for blood, but it was merely a pretext to gain something else, which was to destroy our nation, to destroy us. And then he spoke about Ayesha. He said, in regards to Ayesha, she too had been duped by the hypocrites. He said, Ayesha, he said, I have nothing but great respect for her. He said, yes, me and her have some minor differences, but that's normal. Our differences were hardly any justification for what happened here. He said, again, we fell into the hands of Shaitan. We fell into the hands of the hypocrites. He said, whereas Ayesha, who is one of the mothers of the believers, should have been at home, in her home, safe and sound. Instead, they played her to be on the battlefield, caught up in a tragic war such as this. He said, truly, we were all misguided. Truly, we were all misled by our personal jinn and by the rebels. He said, and as a result, we have suffered as a nation. Eminent companions dead, lives lost for nothing. So you can see, you know, he was really grieved by this, and his speech did have an effect on the other people. Everyone began to weep. Everyone wept because they recognized how they all have been duped by their personal jinn and his allies. They all regretted what had happened. And that's when the people of Basra all stood up and offered Ali their allegiance. They said, never again will we go against the leader of the Muslims. Never again will we fall victim to this. And then they continued on burying their dead. And Ali said that he regarded all the Muslims on both sides who died, that they had all died as martyrs, because they all thought that they were fighting for the right cause. Ali led their prayers, and after the prayers, Ali made the necessary arrangements for the administration of Basra. He also offered money, gave money to the families who had lost their beloved ones, and he also made arrangements for the treatment of the wounded. So this was a terrible time for our nation. This was a horrible time, an embarrassing time. Also, there were some people of Basra who ran away thinking that Ali would come after them, and you know, because he had won this so-called battle. Ali issued a proclamation that anyone who left Basra is welcome to come back, because there is no action against anyone for any role they played in this, because we all fell victim to Shaitan and ourselves. So that's what happened. Basra was now in submittance to the Caliph. But look what it came with. Look what it took. And what about Ayesha? Well, the strain of the battle and the humiliation of her defeat and the failure of her mission And to know that so many of her beloved friends and companions were killed, this was too much for Ayesha to bear. Although she was a brave woman, she broke down crying and she became sick from depression. Ali visited with her frequently, and he tried to calm her. He tried to let her know that it was not her fault. He also made arrangements that she was looked after properly and she was provided with medicine or whatever she needed, because she took this really bad. A man named Ashtar, who was one of the leaders of the sick hypocrites, he bought a expensive camel in Basra and had the nerve to send it to her, telling her this is to replace the one that had been killed on the battlefield. Ayesha refused to accept it, and she cursed this man, and she said he's one of the people responsible for the breakdown of this nation, and she went into a deeper attack, a deeper depression. So see how the hypocrites are? When they see that they won over you, they want to bring you all the way down. Why would this man send her a camel to remind her of what had happened? Okay? After Ayesha's depression began to go away a little bit, she expressed her desire to go back home to Medina. So Ali made arrangements for her to be taken back home to Medina, and a group of women from Basra accompanied her. Also Muhammad, who was the son of Abu Bakr, who was her stepbrother, he also escorted her back to Medina. Now you guys remember, Muhammad was one of the ones who played a role in the death of Uthman too. Remember, he was one of the ones who the rebels got to break into the home of Uthman, and he had grabbed Uthman by his beard to try to stab him. And Uthman reminded him, he said, "You are my best friend's son. I held you when you were a baby." He said, "What would your father, Abu Bakr, do if he saw you now?" And remember, Muhammad threw the knife down and ran away. He couldn't do it. He said, "Oh my God, what am I doing?" And he ran out. Well, as you can see, Muhammad then repented. He repented from the mistake he made with Uthman. So he now accompanied his sister Ayesha back to Medina. And Ali went with them too to help accompany her. And again, he told her, to not let this bother her, to forgive herself. He said, truly, Allah is all forgiving. Allah forgives us of the mistakes we make, Ayesha. Allah forgives us of our sins. He said, but now you have to forgive yourself. He said, forgive yourself and move on. Let the past stay in the past. Get over this. And this is what happens when we do things that we end up regretting. Sometimes depression takes over us. You have to pull yourself out of depression, guys. You cannot allow your bad choices to pull you down and overcome you to the point where you can't move forward. You have to remember, Allah forgives all sins. And if he forgives all sins, why come you can't forgive yourself? The fact that you recognize your mistake, the fact that you recognize what you did wrong, the fact that you asked him to forgive you, now forgive yourself and let it go. Forget about it. Let it go. Let it go. Move forward. Move on. Learn from your mistake. This is what he told Ayesha. Learn from your mistake, Ayesha. Never allow yourself to be duped again. Move forward, mother of the believers. Allah has forgiven you, and so have I, he told her. Now forgive yourself. Ayesha accepted the good intentions of Ali, and they parted as friends. And when she returned back to Medina, she led a retired life. She never, ever, ever again took part in any politics. She spent the rest of her life as a teacher. Ayesha became one of the first scholars and the first teachers of Islam. She spent the rest of her life making up for this horrible mistake by teaching the hadiths to the people. She opened up a school for children and took in the children to teach them the Quran and the Sunnah. And this is how the companions were. Just like, remember, when we talked about Abu Sufyan. When Abu Sufyan became Muslim, he spent the rest of his life making up for the mistakes, making up for the bad choices he made before Islam. He died. He lost both his eyes in the way of Allah, hoping Allah would restore them himself on the day of judgment to him. Well, this is what Ayesha did. This is how we learn from the companions. Whatever bad they did, they repented, and then they spent the rest of their life trying to make up for it by doing good deeds. How many of us do that? You recognize you did a bad thing slandering a sister at the mosque. You did a bad thing slandering a website because of your jealousy, your hatred. What are you going to do to make things right? What good deeds are you going to do to compensate for those evil things you've done? Ayesha compensated. She became a teacher. She became a historian. She became a scholar of Islam. Okay? And as far as Ali, he may have won the battle of the camel. But again, he did not recognize it as a victory. But due to his winning that, he now gained the support of Basra. He also had the support of Kufa. And he was gaining the support of Egypt too. But there was one part of the Muslim world that he had not gained support of yet. And that part of the world was Syria. And who was in Syria? This was Muawiyah. Okay, remember, Muawiyah was the only one left. The only one left who he had not mended the fence with. He had mended the fence with Talha and Zubair before this war broke out. He had mended the fence with Ayesha after the war. But still there was Muawiyah to contend with. So now Ali was faced with a new endeavor. How was he going to deal with the issue of Muawiyah? And this is where we're going to stop off at today. Tomorrow, I'm going to give you a quiz and we'll speak about what happened. What role did Muawiyah play after this? Where did Muawiyah come in? What did happen with Ali and Muawiyah? Fences were mended with Ayesha and the dead. But what about the living Muawiyah? Okay, we'll stop right here for today. If you guys have any questions or comments, inshallah, you can type them on the screen. And again, the whole purpose of this series is for us to learn from the mistakes. Allah made the companions an example for us, their entire life and their deaths. Their good choices and their bad choices were all examples for us. We can benefit from their choices. We can learn how to handle the problems in our lives, the mistakes in our lives, if we learn how they handled theirs. That's the whole purpose of this. And I really hope you guys are benefiting from this. That you are learning how to forgive yourself, as Ayesha had to do. How to move forward and let the past stay in the past. And then to devote your life to doing good things, to try to make up for those evil things. We'll stop right here. If you guys have any questions or comments, inshallah, you can type them on the screen. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha